listening to the Marketing Personalities Podcast, a podcast for growth-minded entrepreneurs that serves up valuable insight and interviews about aligning your marketing strategy with your personality type. Because here's the deal. You shouldn't have to feel fake and salesy in order to grow your business. And you no longer have to. Your marketing strategy can feel good to implement and it can work. You can attract the right clients and customers to your business and grow your profits, all while staying true to who you naturally are. So in the name of honest business growth, bring your unique talents, perspectives, and personality to the table. And join us on this week's podcast episode to discover marketing that feels good for you. Welcome back to another episode of the Marketing Personalities Podcast. I'm Brit Kolo, and I'm here today with Dennis Schiraldi, who is the founder and host of a super cool marketing conference that I'll be speaking at in October called DOYO Live. So Dennis, thank you so much for being here.
Hey, Brit, thanks for having me. I really appreciate it. Thank you.
Yeah. Okay. So Dennis and I are here today to discuss what has led him to found and host such a cool conference and what that whole process has looked like. But before we dig into all of that, you've got to get to know this guy and I've got to get to know this guy, because I was telling Dennis before we hit record, I really only know him, know of him, know about him through this one little facet of his life, which is this conference that he has chosen me to speak at. And I just know he's got his hands in a whole bunch of other things. So I'm curious to get to know you as well, Dennis. So can you tell us about your entrepreneurial life right now? What do you have your hands in? What's going on?
You know, it's pretty crazy. Over the weekend, I was at my sister's house and we were sitting around with some family and I was telling them about all the jobs that I've had or hustles that I've had along my way. And I was like, painter, commercial, and residential. And the guys around the table know that I'm not the most handy person. So like, you people actually hired you to paint? I was a produce clerk at a grocery store. I was a hardware clerk at a hardware store. So I have done a lot of stuff. Worked in a steel mill, a specialty foundry mill, cut grass on golf courses. My entrepreneurial days really started back kind of through Little League Baseball. And then formally at about 12 or 13 years old, I started my first grass cutting business. My dad funded the operation by letting me use his mower and gas. And that was off and running. I cut the neighbor's yard. And then next thing I know, I just kind of started to get one job in the neighborhood after the next. And at 12 or 13, it was such a valuable lesson. Sales, marketing, customer service, delivering on operations, negotiating with, it turns out my first lawn in the neighborhood was a guy that was the head of all purchasing at the local hospital. So it wasn't like I was going to win that negotiation at 12 years old, but it taught me so much. My sister, a tremendous work ethic, would go to a local restaurant and she would wait on tables and have to be there at a certain time, where I would just kind of sit there and be like, wow, look, I can mow all these lawns in like 1 day or 2 days. And I bring home just as much money as she does, and it's all on my own watch. So that at that point was kind of like the birth of within the DNA of saying like, wow, I really like doing this. And then a drought hit the second year. So it kind of crushed the business. But, I parlayed that into like shoveling snow in the winter. And that's really where the roots of the entrepreneurial vein had started. Currently, I have a marketing conference in Youngstown, Ohio. Started as a marketing agency 6 years ago to where I provide lead generation services for B2B healthcare IT companies, which is super niche. And then once I typecasted myself into that land of expertise, I started to branch out just a bit via the marketing conference. And then because of that, I actually then have a complementary business to both. It's a print publication that's a paid for native advertising type of deal where it features local brands, businesses, in an annual publication. And then we have an online application to it as well, plus in-person events. So needless to say, I've got 3 businesses that are really complementary of one another that kind of parlay off each other. And that's the day-to-day.
Okay. So interesting. And so do you still run that marketing agency?
I do. So, what's interesting is that there are marketing agencies that come to and support the marketing conference. And we just live out a law or a philosophy of abundance. Since day one, back in 2016, when I started the conference, and we could get into the why I started that, that a little bit later, but out of the marketing conference, I could maybe take 5 clients. And there was, in our first year, 220 people that showed up. So I started the marketing conference kind of, just backing up. I went into healthcare sales and marketing and diagnostic imaging, and it was pre-Web 2.0. So I was out doing what we now talk about as content or inbound marketing, only door to door, educating physician practices on medical imaging services, reinventing myself every time I went in the door, and all those things and the culmination of those things. Web 2.0 drops, I decided to start marketing a medical imaging facility with the use of a website and social media, which doesn't sound too innovative right now, but back in 2006, all the experts in the healthcare industry sitting there saying you would never want to associate marketing your healthcare practice where college kids are posting themselves with cake parties. And it was so disruptive. It started to make national trade publications. And that's when I started to look at it and say, wow, I'm onto something here. Nobody else is doing it. There's the agency model, ad buys, branding, but there's not really anybody saying we'll manage your social media and we'll show you how to do it. But it was still pretty early. Mm-hmm. And GE Healthcare called up and said, wow, you've got some of our technology and we like what you're doing online with some of your YouTube videos and social media. Do you think you could come into our radiology division and help us do that? Well, I went. 3 years into that, though, at the start, I was like, okay, here's what our Twitter strategy is going to look like. And day one at GE back in 2010, regulatory and legal just they fell off the table. And every month we'd have another meeting. They're like, didn't we just have this meeting last month? We cannot do Twitter at GE. We are GE Healthcare. Everything needs to be checked by a lawyer, quality assurance. And so we couldn't be very nimble with the Twitter strategy when you had to be, right? And this is editorial software calendars and everything that we know now. So it's wow, we're in really, really new territory, uncharted waters. So I started with a webinar strategy at GE, and the webinar strategy really fed the content strategy and was very successful in lead generation. So 3 years of it, height of the recession, it was a good place to hang out. I like to say I got my GE MBA. But I've used that to build my network to know that I was eventually going to launch the agency. And I lined up my first client and just acted as their director of marketing as a contracted entity, and then ended up getting 2 or 3 more clients that started that original agency business.
Perfect. So interesting. And not only did you choose to be disruptive and pioneering, just saying, hey, let's get your business online, but you were saying this to a niche that we already know kind of falls behind in what's new. I mean, us as online entrepreneurs today, yeah, we are like this little speedboat. No, we can go for the next thing, no problem. And then you take that speedboat approach and give it to this big, huge ocean liner. And they're like, wait. We can't actually turn on a dime here. And so I really admire the tenacity that I hear in your story and this vision. Do you identify as a strong visionary?
Here's what's interesting. So I think the outside view looking in is very easy to say, huge risk taker, spontaneity, but in my mind, everything that I'm doing is very calculated and very methodical with a thought process. Look, when I was at GE, I knew I was leaving the day that I pretty much got there and was building everything as motivation to get out. So that agency that I launched was the 3-year process in the last medical imaging business and the 3-year process in the GE business to figure out the business model. So to bring that to light was a 6-year, kind of ordeal. And when I called my boss to fire him at GE, I got my 3rd kid home from the hospital. And when most individuals with, the 3rd kid, the mortgage, and all those different things going on, the safest play that most people felt or feel is that let me tuck in with this nice, cushy base salary. I've got my benefits. And I was thinking just the opposite. Like, I didn't know what the future ahead held in store. There was always a cutback of 10% of the labor force each year due to performance or financial reasons. And I never knew how close I was to that line. And I just wanted to control my future. So as I look at it, one of the things I do as a former college athlete is that we were early on, there was all this talk about getting into the zone back in the day. And like Michael Jordan would get in the zone. And a lot of it was visualization, like training, like just like seeing yourself in a successful position athletically, playing the game out in your head. And then when you got to actually go play it, like the game either slowed down or you were in that position. And I used a lot of that over the course of the past couple of decades of literally like it almost dreamlike. Like I went from running, and as I've gotten older, I've had to now convince myself that walking with my dog for 5 miles has the same medicinal benefits. But it's usually like I go out during the day, I work from home, and like I'll take like a 5-mile walk at lunch for an hour, and I'll go through business scenarios and processes and visualize either like the conference being ultra successful with a packed house and, like what I'm going to be saying, or putting myself in these different situations. And so I can kind of visualize what's going on so that when it does appear that it's a risky type of switch, or it's not, it's actually really well thought out. And it's a process that takes a while to get there through that.
Okay. I love the distinction that you're making here. And we're going to talk about the conference, but I need to kind of underline what you just expressed. So everybody that's listening, Dennis and I talked about this before we hit record. Dennis is an ESTP marketing personality type, which the name for that personality type is called entrepreneur. Now, we can all be entrepreneurs and not be ESTPs. I think it's kind of like that stereotypical idea of an entrepreneur, but just, let go of that label. I don't think that I have a whole lot of ESTPs in my listenership right now, but I know that it's growing. I've watched more ESTPs come on board and get on my email list and whatnot. And I know some ESTPs in my real life. I've actually worked with some ESTPs in my real life. And what I think you just explained it could be, now I'm not an ESTP, so I don't know. But from what I understand, from what I've observed and what I've studied, that outward appearance of the risk taker, the action taker, the like, we are going for it kind of mentality, it's seen in an interesting light from the outside. And internally, there's still so much calculation because you're still a thinker, right? Like EST, T stands for thinker. There's so much thinking and logic behind what you do. And paired with I term it as like this vibrant, just go for it energy, like pairing that with that T thinker and the willingness to stay open and pivot and iterate and not get too attached to what you're doing now and the outcome that you want it to produce. All of that versatility and flexibility creates you. And it's a very interesting this is all me, this is my opinion. I find it to be a very interesting dynamic and super admirable because I'm more stubborn. I'm way more stubborn because I've seen this play out with my relationships with ESTPs. I'm way more stubborn. I'm way more set in my ways. And then I watch you guys out there just like, from my point of view, like just throwing stuff at the wall. And it's like, holy smokes, that's stuck. Like, how'd you do that? That's amazing.
I will tell you this. There is a big element of stubbornness because, again, like for me, it's oxygen. Like I just feel like I've gone back and, anytime I'm consulting with somebody, it gets very, like the offers come because you're there, they trust you, you're in the business. And, there's not just like the financial switch or doing it. It's the emotional switch as well. Like you just like, you buckled up and you're like, okay, I'm going for this. And then like 6 months later, you're like, oh crap. Like they're really offering me a job. Like, why are you offering me a job right now? Like I'm completely comfortable with our situation. You're paying me monthly. I've got a couple other people. But in lieu of that, I feel like I'm able to pivot or kind of experience this, but I do have a serious element of being stubborn of, look, I walked on to play college basketball at 5'8", and I'm kind of exaggerating now my height, but like through the years, I was, here's the thing, like God blessed me with having abnormally long arms for a short man. I'm super quick and I'm super stubborn with the fact that like, when everybody was like, you should not be playing college basketball, I'm like, no, watch, I am going to play college basketball. I'm going to show you that I can do that. Or, with the business, it's kind of a little man's complex, but it's like with the business, it's like, so now we have 4 kids. So you throw that into the mix and think about that for a second. And I had just started the 3rd business 2 years ago. And my wife walks in my office and says, I need to talk to you. And it was kind of like it was one of those just different tonalities. And she's like, I'm pregnant. And I'm like, what? Like, I thought we were done.
Wake up call.
Right? It was like, oh, we know what causes this. And it's like, so there was a gap. We were out of diapers and we were going out for date night once a week. And now we're like, we're right back in it. And, so that business was starting. The conference was in flight and the agency, I think the agency model is a little bit broken. And if you want to talk about why, I'd love to tell you my thoughts on that. But like, so it's like, okay, we got to keep going because there's evidence here that this is all working. And we're in a very painful spot right now with developing the brand, ramping up. And so that takes a level of stubbornness to say like, I've tested the numbers and I have the gut belief, like we got to keep doing this. Like we got to keep going. So.
Yeah, that sounded like a pretty big turning point for you. How many years ago was that?
So, well, what happened is that was 2 years ago. So the print publication took from start to finish almost 2 years from conception to actually launch to bring to market. It wasn't, people always end up seeing the end product. Like the conference in itself was like, oh, wow, like they did this conference and over 200 people showed up. But from start to finish, it was a 3-year process in my mind, taking the business plan out and putting it back in the drawer and saying like, do I really have the heart to go for this? Like, And so at the point where I found out my wife was pregnant with our 4th child, it was a pivotal time. The conference was in its sophomore year. The agency was, about 4 or 5 years old at that point. And then I had this book that I had to work on, and figure out how we were going to get actually people to sign up for that. And then lo and behold, we went through, obviously with the conference that year, the book was in flight of acquiring people and doing photo shoots. And then we had the baby in November. And the day after we had him, we found out that he had a congenital heart condition that was the only way that it was going to be resolved was with an open heart surgery to just get to the point, it was a rare heart condition. Tetralogy of Fallot is a thing that was happening. It's a rare thing. We educated ourselves, obviously with as much as we possibly could. And then I spent 10 years in healthcare. So I started calling it favors. Long story short, we ended up in an open heart surgery at 6 months old at UPMC in Pittsburgh. Leo, our youngest, he's fine. There's a happy ending story. His trajectory is great. So we're great with that. But that was last April. So then 3 months later, marketing conference year number 3 hits. And then we put out the print publication was getting finalized all at the same time and came out in August. So like you want to talk about an emotional roller coaster ride that was, here's the stress from the business that really fails in comparison to the health of your kid. And you have you don't have a choice. Like you have to keep going. Like there was like sponsors, there were people already signed up. There was 75% of the book was already committed. It's not like you can just say, hey, I'm having a family health crisis. And so we had to figure out how to manage that quickly.
What you just said, Dennis, a couple things that I have to underline. First of all, 3 years in the making. I think we hear those numbers and we're like, okay, yeah, like 3 years. But then think about what were you doing 3 years ago? How long have you been into your current thing? And really think about what a 3-year chunk actually looks and feels like on a calendar and in your body. So that's a huge thing. We are in this for the long game. You have to be. If you're really an entrepreneur and you're really creating a business, you have to be in it for the long game. And then of course, I know I have somebody listening and they're like, 3 years is not a long. No, you're right. 3 years is not a long game. 3 years is just the beginning. And then the long game comes way after that. So there's something huge in there. And then you take us into this life, like it's an entire life. And I'm so glad you bring it up because of course, this is a business podcast. This is a marketing podcast. We talk about that a lot. And all of us who sit behind these mics and choose to show up and serve the audiences that we get a chance to serve, we also have lives happening behind us. They're happening. And plus, like, we're working at home. So they're actually happening like in our space all day long. And something I think that you pointed out was like you got into this point in your life where you had all of these business professional things going on and you had a huge turning point in your life journey. And your answer to that was, I have no other choice than to keep going. And I don't think everybody responds that way, Dennis. And I really admire that that's how you respond. I think a lot of us, anybody who's listening to this right now has that spark in them. And to bring that kind of spark and that I'm going to keep going, like that's it. Like if you want to distill down to what's helping people move forward and grow and progress and live out their life purpose and all these things, like when the chips are down and you're in that moment, what do you do? And I think this is a beautiful example of what you did and what we do as entrepreneurs. Like we should say, like, what am I going to do other than just like keep going, right? So cool. You know what? I needed to hear that story today. So I'm so glad that you said that. So glad.
Well, I appreciate that. I mean, there's a couple things that come along with it. It's like, we all talk about this long game, but at the end of the day too, like you're in survival mode and you got to make money today in order to survive for the long game. Right. So like, that's an important piece of it. Yes. There's short term and there's long term. And I firmly believe in that. I think that the conference is a 20-year play. Unless, you talked about the emotional or unemotional attachment, that if something were to come along for acquisition along the way and it makes sense, then we do it. But, the other side of it is that I have 4 kids and they range from 10 to 20 months. And I tell them all the time, that when you grow up, you got to be happy, man. Like you got to follow that. And I hear so many people talk about that, but, the educator side of me is to say, look, I can't just tell you about it. I got to show you this. Like I have to do this and I have to do this and model this for you. Just like we model good, polite manners when we're out in public and those things. So it's very routine that my motivation is coupled with, I don't ever want to have to ask anybody for a day off work. And, that's really one of the biggest goals that I have is like, if I want to take my kids to the pool, I don't want to ever have to call anybody and be like, look, I want to take my kids to the pool today. And if that means sacrificing that afternoon time to be with them to work later, then so be it. For me, it's that. It's also the fact that I've got this bigger responsibility to a family, not only just to provide financially for them, but then also to provide and model, hey, look, you want to go work for somebody? Great. Good for you. Go work for somebody. You want to have your own business? You can do that too. And whatever ultimately drives you and makes you happy. And I will routinely bring them to meetings with me. My oldest son and my 8-year-old have gotten into video stuff. My daughter comes to fashion shoots with us, like when we do the publication. Like, so there's different things that I have them, getting exposure to. And just the other day, the 10-year-old and 8-year-old came to me and they're like, oh, Dad, we put 2 mini bikes, electric dirt bikes, into an Amazon cart. So to put this into perspective to you, we have had Nerf guns show up at the house unsolicited. Like, how did you know to put stuff in an Amazon cart and order it? So for those of you that are out there in the marketing world to understand what has already transpired with the next generation of buyers, it's already here.
Yeah.
All right. So anyway, I'm like, you guys realize that you have $900 worth of mini bikes sitting in an Amazon cart right now. I'm like, okay, that's not happening. But B, I'll tell you what we'll do. And the 8-year-old's like, look, here's the deal, Dad. You're either getting it for us or I'm asking Santa. I'm like, oh, so now you're giving me an ultimatum. So we end up with this conversation. I said, look, here's the deal. you guys make half the money and I'll kick in the rest. And I said, we're going to put together a business plan. They're like, what's a business plan? I'm like, look, you're going to figure out how you're going to make the money. And I'm not talking about household chores, because that's your payment for living in my house, is making your bed and cleaning up after yourself. I'm talking like yard work. I'm talking like, if there's somebody out there that you can go, sweep some grass, go to your grandparents, do some work for them, you're going to have to make some money. And once you make half, I'll match the rest. That's the gift that I think I'm giving them, is teaching them how to hustle in order to be able to obviously fund their lavish little eventual lifestyle.
Well, and think strategically about, okay, how are we going to do this, right? Like, you just created this question, this real life problem, quote unquote problem, but like to solve in their lives. It's so cool. Those are life skills right there. I love that. I love that. Oh man. Okay. So all of this person that we've gotten to know here, I'm just that much more excited to meet you in person in about a month at DOYO Live. So I want to switch over and talk about this digital marketing and interactive design conference that you've started. Tell us about it. I mean, I know the logistics, right? So listeners, DOYO Live, it's happening in Youngstown, Ohio, October 17th and 18th this year, 2019. I'm speaking at it. I am so excited and honored to be on that stage. So Dennis, tell us about this event, how it's really designed, what it's designed to do, and who it's for.
Yeah, absolutely. So, I'm just impressed that you are able to drop the name in the spirit of what we actually call it. So we call it DOYO Live, but most people call it DOYO, the DOYO. One keynote speaker one year on stage pronounced it the DOYO. And that's kind of like the ongoing joke, even going into our fourth year, of what we actually call it. And it stands for Do Youngstown. If I could back up first, I started the marketing agency. We were living in Columbus, Ohio. We moved back to Youngstown. I had been out of the area. My wife is from this area as well for 20 years, actually about 21 years. So we moved back. I have this agency. And one of the reasons why I also started the agency, because I was traveling a lot in my corporate job. And I saw my 2-year-old on Facebook on Halloween. And I was like, I don't want to watch my kid grow up on Facebook because I got a job. But when I started my agency, I had a customer in Dallas, Florida, New Jersey. And I was like, wait a minute, like I don't have any customers in my own backyard. And then coupled with the fact that I was formerly a school teacher. And so I've always had this need to want to mentor and coach and kind of educate people along the way, both young and adult learners. And then the tertiary thing is like, there's this movement going on in Youngstown where there's this revitalization happen. And it's like, what can I do to help out? And here's what I know about. I know about marketing. Like, that's what I know. Like, that's my area of expertise. So I went to a social media healthcare summit in Rochester, Minnesota. It was held in the basement of a hotel for 2 days. There's not much there. It's the Mayo Clinic. And I spoke. And I'm like, there's not a lot here. I mean, the Mayo Clinic is obviously an amazing healthcare institution, but they managed to get like 300-400 people here, and they all had to fly in from everywhere in the country. That coupled with, I had been thinking about this marketing conference for a few years. And so that was enough motivation, that particular event, where I was going to come home, and the flight was delayed out of Rochester. They put us on a bus, drove us up to the Twin Cities, which is beautiful country, by the way. Like, if you've ever been on the ride from Rochester to the Twin Cities. But that was a delayed flight to now I'm pouring myself into bed at 2:00 in the morning. So I got just enough ambition and motivation to say, you know what, I'm going to make a run at this. I went to LinkedIn the next day, found out there's like 65,000 people within a 60-mile radius of Youngstown, Ohio, that have a marketing in their title. That's not business people. That's just straight marketing. That's not salespeople. And I started to look at our facilities and infrastructure. And then I started to actually call on some of my friends to ask them if they would partner, because I was like, this is going to be a big undertaking. I had done some big trade shows with GE Healthcare. I got some of that experience there. And everybody's like, it's a great idea, but we don't want to partner. And so I went at it alone, formed an advisory board, got some volunteers, called on my friends in marketing and said, here's what I'm doing. I'm going to promote you to speak at this conference, and it's going to be a win-win. Like, you hopefully will get clients, you'll get whatever if you're an agency or not. And that's what we did. And we hope to get 150 people to show up in year one. And the way the internet works, an introduction to an introduction. Joe Polizzi, founder of Content Marketing World in Cleveland, Ohio, which attracts 4,000 people from around the world, written several books. Content Inc. is one of them. He and I were able to get a conversation through an introduction, and he agreed to be our keynote speaker in year one. Cleveland's about an hour and a half away, hour and 20 minutes away. So he basically legitimized us in day one. Joe's a big deal. Top 10 influencer in the world of marketing today, according to Forbes. And so we sold over 200 tickets in year one with sponsors. And then what that really did was it helped to establish me in my own backyard as a marketing person as well. So that was kind of my content strategy. We leveraged an online presence, not just to sell tickets, but at DOYO.com, like we do monthly webinars on the how-tos of marketing. We do meetups in person on a monthly basis. We produce content consistently. A lot of it comes from people like yourself, Brit, and people that are speaking or sponsors. And we really try to create the win-win. Like, again, like put you on board as the person of expertise. And hopefully at the end of the day, that grows our audience base. And then we ask them to come to, our conference one time a year. And we've expanded out to now doing quarterly workshops locally. And again, that model, then I was naive in thinking that there was, I didn't realize there was a revenue model behind conferences. So between sponsors, which we do year-long sponsors, and then kind of a traditional sponsorship, we do ticket sales. Through that generates revenue. And then it also, out of that 260 to 300 people that have attended over the first 3 years, creates opportunities for me to work with them on a consulting basis. Joe Polizzi, he's coming back to keynote the conference in year 4, which I'm very excited about because of the growth and the change and the development. Book that he wrote with Robert Rose is called Killing Marketing. And the whole premise behind that movement is how you use your marketing within your organization as a profit center. It's really funny how much I align with Joe even before I read his books. Like, actually, when I read his books, I'm like, oh, he's describing what I'm doing. So Content Inc. was that model of developing and creating content like this podcast, growing an audience, and then what you do with it from there is obviously in the most genuine way possible. You're ultimately, how you monetize that opportunity. And so that was kind of the DOYO Live model from day one. And then we also, when we said, okay, wow, look, like this conference generates revenue, it pays for itself, generates revenue, and it generates some clients. That's the Killing Marketing model that Joe wrote about in his last book, which he's keynoting this year, where like you'll take Red Bull Media House, for instance, that Red Bull obviously is an energy drink company, but they're now making almost as much revenue off of the media model and making media in action sports. And so we figured out what's the relative model for us. And so that's DOYO Live, the historical perspective. The why I do it is professional development for sales, marketing, business, and creative people to learn something that they can implement into their business that day is a goal. The second goal is to have an amazing experience at the event. And the third is to make a meaningful connection. Like connect with somebody that either it's a job, it's a client, it's somebody to go get coffee with. And if we continue to live that mantra like we have, our conference continues to grow. In addition to that, the mission is to give back to the community. So we've generated over $10,000 of either in-kind sponsorships or donations to area nonprofits through the course of doing this conference. We have a bigger purpose of trying to stimulate the economy here in Youngstown. And even if it's just, in our first year, 2 people came in from out of town and stayed at hotels. Last year, we had like 25 people stay at hotels that came from California, Toronto, New York. And we hire freelance people to do work for us, sign makers, whatever it is, we're trying to just do a little bit of our part. And then obviously the lifetime value of this that we can't even measure is what do you get out of this conference that you can implement into your business that generates business in the area and that economic stimulation there. And 2 or 3 things I'm really proud of. Numbers kind of keep going. Guy in year 1 attended, got a job, spoke in year 2. 2 other gentlemen, local business leaders, just kind of a similar background. They became best of friends by meeting at the conference, business relationship. They travel on vacations now. Like they formed a bond and a relationship as a result of meeting at DOYO Live. And then the third is that I believe that like content marketing and inbound marketing we're going to eventually make it here. We have forced the issue to the point where like every agency in town is either a HubSpot customer now or, they're pushing content on a consistent basis. And a lot of the methodologies that you see being taught at DOYO Live you can see them in people's marketing in the area, that they come from. Like, so that's the why. And yeah, I appreciate you giving me an opportunity to talk about all that. And I'm really excited to have you attend the conference. So like, there's a person that's speaking, Deanna Facillo, who's been with us since day one. And she's the minute I did the marketing personalities test, marketingpersonalities.com, right, Brit?
Yeah. Yep.
I emailed Deanna. I'm like, Deanna, like you are a huge you were a psychology major in college. You are going to love this. So she immediately went and took the test and like she fell in love immediately. So she's super stoked about meeting you. And here's the other one. So use Brit's promo code Brit, BRIT. You'll save $15 on tickets for the conference as well.
Oh, very nice. I like that. Yeah. So I love hearing the genesis of this. I hear so much of this, like this grassroots, putting your feet on the ground where you are kind of thing. And so much of the beginnings and not only the beginnings, but exactly what it is today and what I believe it'll continue to be. It's so rooted in those human to human connections. Like that's how you got connected with Joe. That's how you got your first speaker lineup. That's how you established a great year one. And then that's what you are reflecting on to being part of, the best parts of this thing is that that not only are you making connections, it's rippling out and everybody that attends, they're making really important connections as well. So that through line of that entire story really gets me jazzed because that's what we're here for, right? Like that's exactly what we're here for, is to help other humans with whatever they're trying to do. And that's what service is all about. And so just coming back down, like landing the plane, I'm all about it. Can't wait to meet you in October. This is going to be so good. And of course, if you are at all in the vicinity or not, and you just want to come to Youngstown, Ohio next month, like please come and hang out. And I'm going to be really interested to hear who is getting their ticket and who I'm going to get to meet in person after they hear this podcast episode and they're like, yeah, I want to go there. So if you do decide to get tickets and you're going to be there, you've got to let me know. Please come find me on Instagram and let me know that you're going to be there.
I think people will be pleasantly surprised with the way that things are coming together in town. But I will tell you this too, like we talk about the long game, like you can just go and subscribe to our email newsletter and get tons of free content on a consistent basis. And we're cool with that too. Like, I mean, we'd love to see you, but really at the end of the day, like you can tap into the resource. Like we're doing a webinar on August 27th about podcasts. Like how do you get started? Like, see, one of the things that I love is that you're doing this podcast. Like I have failed miserably. We talk about some of the wins. We've done some good things. I have failed miserably for 2 years now on launching a podcast. Our method has been that Facebook Live, and then we tried to repurpose it that you were on back a few months ago. And I've not done the true podcast thing. And it's like, I could never get the technology right. I could never gone that route. So we have an individual on August 27th that's doing, it's going to come out. Obviously, this podcast is going to come out after that webinar, but it'll be available on demand. And it's going to be everything you ever wanted to know about podcasting. So, we're doing this on a regular basis. Whether you come to the conference or not is the point, is that we got a ton of great content with a lot of great thought leaders and experts, and you could tap into it however you want.
Yeah. And I have been on your email list for a while now, and I can attest to, yes, this is a conference and it's a whole ecosystem of support and education and service, which I'll tell you right now, like was the main reason I even applied to speak, because I got on your webpage and I'm like, whoa, this is not actually just a conference. The conference looks amazing. And it's all these other things. I like the energy around all of the content that I'm seeing. I want to be a part of this. So it's speaking volumes. And if you're going to be there live, please let me know, because I want to give you a hug and a high five. So one last question, Dennis, I want to know, we're just going to throw this out into the universe. What will make this year's event the best one yet?
You know what? I come back to that. It's a very quick question, very quick answer for me. And it's because I continue to live the same mission with the goals. And, my team of people that have volunteered in the past, and I understand why they do it. They'll high five with the attendance count, and you need to count numbers, obviously, in order to be able to sustain. But it continues for me to just deliver an amazing experience to the people that are attending the conference. And if we continue to do that on a consistent basis, that you've got an amazing lineup of content that people will learn something to walk away with that can implement in their business. And I can connect you with another individual. And if we can continue to do that at scale at this event, each year is going to be better than the next. And that's what I'm just hyper focused on doing. I don't think that there's one singular event with, a DJ that's going to play, or, there's one singular moment as a speaker that's going to separate themselves from the herd from one year to the next. It literally is living those three things on a consistent basis that continues to elevate the conference as an event year over year.
Man, I love that groundedness. I love that. It's so good. So good. Okay. So again, details on DOYO Live. It's happening October 17th and 18th, 2019. It's just about a month away. Tickets are still available. The link to get tickets is right in the show notes. So whatever app you're using to listen to this right now, it's right below. Just click on it. Can't miss it. Easy. It's in Youngstown, Ohio. So if you're in Pennsylvania, Ohio, Virginia, Michigan, Midwest, anything, get yourself there. I know it's going to be great. I'm so honored and looking forward to speaking and also attending all the sessions I can get myself to, because I can sense the quality of the information and the energy that's going to be in those rooms. And so I just know it's going to be top notch. So get your ticket, get yourself there. Dennis, if the listeners would like to reach out to you directly, where can they go to reach you online? Where's the best place?
Just depends on what your favorite social media platform is. At D Schiraldi on Twitter, Dennis Schiraldi on LinkedIn. I'm very active there. You can shoot me an email anytime you want at dennis@doyolive.com. I'm on Instagram, Facebook, you name it, we're out there. But you can connect with me on email if you have any questions. I genuinely will respond with answers anytime. I'm super accessible. And if you ever have an interest and got something to say and want to be, on a podcast, or once we get through the conference season, we do a Facebook Live show every Friday at 11 a.m. We'll circle back with you. But yeah, I'm very accessible. Just type in the first and last name and you can generally find me.
Very cool. And we will link to all of that in the show notes if you want to connect with Dennis one-on-one. So awesome. Hey, thank you so much for being here. And I'll see you and hopefully some of our listeners next month at DOYO Live.
Awesome, Brit. Thank you. You have a great week. We'll see you.
All right. See ya.
Thanks for listening to this episode of the Marketing Personalities Podcast. Now it's time to connect your marketing strategy to your personality type. Go to marketingpersonalities.com/MPP to download your marketing personality type full report. Use the code MPP at checkout to get $10 off. And that's a super special code for podcast listeners as a way to say thank you for being here. In your full report, you'll learn about your personality type, how it relates to the work you do, what your best marketing strategy includes so you can start implementing it right away, what your worst marketing strategy includes so you can avoid it, and so much more. Go to marketingpersonalities.com/MPP to get your full report and use the code MPP at checkout to receive $10 off your purchase. And one more thing before you skip on to the next podcast. Would you please share this episode with your entrepreneur friends who also need to feel good about their marketing strategies? Take a quick screenshot of your podcast app right now and share it out via text, Facebook, or my favorite, Instagram. Remember to tag me at Marketing Personalities in the photo so I can be sure to send you a huge high five and thank you for sharing the love. This podcast is edited and produced by the Podcast Engineers. They're pretty great, and you can find them at podcastengineers.com. That's all for now. Thanks as always for listening, and I'll catch you back here next week on the Marketing Personalities Podcast. Love ya. Bye.